Okay, so let's get back into it then. Song of Songs. And we left off in chapter 5. We left off in chapter 5 with verse 8. And the Shunammite, who we discussed in great detail last time, she now is the wise again. She's wise. Let's see what happened last week. And remember that, she was in that sorry state. Couldn't get out of bed, couldn't be bothered, loads of excuses. But eventually, as we'll probably look back over tonight at certain points, she got out of bed, didn't she? She went out, got out of bed, went to the door, opened the door. The beloved was gone. She saw him, she couldn't find him. She called, he gave no answer. The watchman who went about the city found her and wounded her, didn't beat her and wounded her. And the keepers of the walls stripped the veil from her. And she now went to the daughters of Jerusalem, verse 8. I charge you, swear to me. This is how serious this is. Swear to me. I charge you, I put you under oath, O daughters of Jerusalem. If you find my beloved, that you tell him I'm lovesick. I went down the road, down on Standard of Homesick. This week when Jesse was going on holiday and Isaac was crying, wasn't he, going, I'm going to miss Jesse. And it's like, that's lovesick. He loves his sister and he's going to miss her. So it's that, and that's where we left off last week. And I said we would just mention this, and I do want to mention it just briefly again. It has been mentioned in the past, something that gets mentioned regularly in our other studies. But it's this Daughters of Jerusalem situation, because they're still obviously here. They haven't departed, have they, in chapter 4. They haven't been included in that bridal party, if you will. And they're still here. And so just going back to chapter 3, in that bridal narrative, it was clearly the bridegroom was coming. Solomon, chapter 3, verse 11, was coming on the day of his wedding, the day of the gladness of his heart. And then just before that, verse 11, it says, go forth, O daughters of Zion. Zion. And I think there is a subtle difference. That's how I read this. There's a subtle difference between the daughters of Zion and the daughters of Jerusalem. And sometimes in scripture, there's like parallelisms and it's saying the same thing in a different way. But in this case of Zion and Jerusalem, I think there is a subtle difference, which I think you'll want to know, is the Galatians 4 message. So just briefly, so you understand what I'm saying with this daughters of Jerusalem, Zion paradox, and why the daughters of Jerusalem are still here and saying what they're saying. Because it's Galatians chapter 4, famous for us, great passage, but just to get to the point, it's chapter 4, verse 21. Tell me, you who desire to be under the law, do you not hear the law, the Torah? And he goes right back to Abraham. So it's clear that the Torah didn't start with Moses and Sinai. And that is the point, because he's saying it's written that Abraham had 2 sons, the one by a bondwoman, the other by a free woman. This is Ishmael and Isaac, isn't it? But he who was of the bondwoman was born according to the flesh. Bearing in mind this language of being born again, that which is flesh, that which is spirit. You must be born again. You must be born of the Spirit. But this bondwoman, this son is born according to flesh. But the one of the free woman through promise, that's huge in the new covenant, the promise. Which things are symbolic? These 2 children, these 2 women are symbolic. One, these are the 2 covenants. 2 covenants. One from Mount Sinai, which gives birth to bondage, which is Hagar. And this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage with her children. See, the Jerusalem, which now is in bondage. And that's the 2 covenants. That's one of the 2 covenants we're looking at. The daughters of Jerusalem, are they this old covenant written on tablets of stone that couldn't change anyone? Are they that? Because they are, that's Jerusalem is likened to that, the natural, earthly Jerusalem. But there is another Jerusalem, And it says in verse 26, the Jerusalem above is free, which is the mother of us all. That makes sense of being born again and born from above, doesn't it? The Jerusalem above is the mother of us all. You've got to be born again. You must be born from above, born of the Spirit. Rejoice so, for it's it, rejoice so barren, you who do not bear. Break forth and shout, you who are not in labour, for the desolate has many more children than she who has a husband, quote from Isaiah 54. But just to finish that off, I think you need to add Hebrews 12, because Zion wasn't actually mentioned there, was it? The heavenly Jerusalem was. But in Hebrews 12, it's the same language in verse 18, when the writer of Hebrews is saying, you new covenant believers, have not come to the mountain that may be touched, i.e. Sinai, and that burns with fire, and to blackness and darkness and tempest, and the sounds of a shofar and the voice of words, so that those who heard it begged that the words should not be spoken to them anymore, for they could not endure what was commanded. And if so much as a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned or shot through with an arrow. And so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I am exceedingly afraid and trembling. Think of that when it says in Philippians to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, because you have come to Mount Zion, you see, the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You've got to connect that with chapter 4, Galatians, haven't you? And see there's two covenants, and we are the sons and daughters of Zion, and it's the sons and daughters of Zion that went forth on the wedding day, and the daughters of Jerusalem are left behind, because I would say that they haven't really been maybe born again. They love the Lord, like a lot of people in that condition, maybe. But anyway, you come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to the innumerable company of angels, the general assembly and church of the firstborn. That's why we read this a lot, who are registered in heaven, to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of just men made perfect, to Yeshua, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaks better things than that of Abel. So that is how I see why the daughters of Jerusalem are still here, and why they're saying what they're saying, because she has just charged them. If you find my beloved, tell him I'm lovesick. So this is now where we continue in chapter 5, verse 9. As they say, what is your beloved? More than any other beloved, O fairest amongst women. What is your beloved more than any other beloved, that you so charge us? You put us under oath that we'll tell him you're lovesick. What is your beloved? And you can just see it in the natural. They're saying you're fairest amongst women. I mean, you are beautiful. This is what was said to her in chapter 1, wasn't it? The beloved said this to her. They were all around at that scene, as we'll see in a minute. The daughters of Jerusalem were at the very beginning of this song, professing love and all kinds themselves, but obviously didn't go deeper into this. It was all just saying it, not doing it. That's kind of faith, But they acknowledge that she is. You are the fairest amongst women. In other words, you're that beautiful. You could get anyone. There's plenty of fish in the sea for you. If you fell, that fella's got off. Come on, there's loads more. What's so special about this, that someone as beautiful as you are so troubled? Makes sense, doesn't it? You're so fair, you're the fairest amongst women, and yet there's only one love that you're concerned about. That had this effect on it. Brilliant, isn't it? But going back to the daughters of Jerusalem, we did come across them in chapter 1, if you remember. The very start of chapter 1, they were there in verse 4. After the Shulamite started off this love story with, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Your love's better than wine. All of that. And then they came in, didn't they? And they said, we will run after you in verse 4. And then she said, the king has brought me into his chambers. And they said, we will be glad and rejoice in you. We will remember your love more than wine. it's like they seem to have forgotten, all of this profession of, we will remember your love more than wine. We will run after you. It sounds great. Oh, this love that you've got, that you've found, we will also, we'll have some of this. And here they are, you see, and they are here, and they will, and they'll form part of this awesome company of people who I believe in that time of testing will hold fast to the faith, who will understand the times that we're in, who will love not their lives unto death. That's what I believe we're looking at now. I believe we can learn so much from the rest of this book, this song, that we can draw benefit from now, this side of the rapture and the great testing time. I think there's still time to learn, and I think that we can learn from this. So the daughters of Jerusalem are asking, chapter 5, verse 9, what is your beloved? More than any other beloved, O fairest amongst women. What is your beloved more than any other beloved, that you so charge us? Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's look then, going skipping through lots of notes, but let's just move on and get into it, because, as I say, I've loved this song for a long time, about 10 years or so, and understand certain parts of it, I believe, and other parts I've never really got into and really studied as much as other parts. I've lost the overall theme is what I've really looked at, and things that really fit with that is what I've embraced. But now, as I came to study this at the start of the week, I thought, wow, this is awesome. Once again, I've got to say, the commentators, I don't know where they'd have been without the commentaries I've read. I've got some ideas, but just reading the commentaries, and I've also got to say, reading the Hebrew, especially in this verse now, has really helped. And again, I just encourage you, if you've got time to read the commentaries, and especially one guy who I will reference tonight, John Gill, mentioned him before, but as I read him, it's like he stands out with such a beautiful gospel application to everything. It's so gospel oriented. He's from the 1700s, and he's the guy I've mentioned in the past that could speak Greek by the age of 11. Thank God for these teachers that God's put in the body throughout the centuries, and that we can still read them today. And you can see how others have read and they've cleaned, and it's just a wonderful. I'm so glad to have had to have put the time in, because as it's come to this bit now, clearly the daughters of Jerusalem are inquiring of this once foolish, now wise again, virgin. As I've said many times, Matthew 25, the wise virgins didn't have oil, tried to get some, were told, no, go and get your own, and did. They did, didn't they? They went and got the oil, and then they came, and it was too late, the door was shut, but they got the oil that they were told they were needed to go and get. A bit like the Laodiceans, the counsel to the Laodiceans. There's hope if he'll take the rebuke, he'll take the discipline, if he'll do what he says. There's hope for the Laodiceans. There's hope for the foolish virgins. I still say it's time to come out and get into the right assembly. I still think we've got time, but at this juncture, when the time's passed, as it were, you're looking now at what the wise virgin, and the description that she gives of the beloved is something I realised I need to understand this. This is not just some lovely poem by Keats or someone like that, about daffodils, words, whatever. It's about and inspired by the beloved. This is as much as we had a description of the bride and her hair and all of the attributes that we looked at, and her appearance. Well, this is of the beloved. It's of our beloved. It's of our Saviour. This is a description of him. Clearly it is, but how much should we now want to understand this? And ask for understanding, ask for wisdom, and ask him to really open our eyes to this, because it's so amazing. And I've studied the whole portion tonight, the whole section of all of these descriptions right through to the end of the chapter. Whether we'll get that far, I don't know. Because I'd say it's quite some intense reading to do, I'd say. Some amazing stuff to read. And so we're in no rush, Alan. We're in no rush. So let's just see where we get to. So as ever, Lord, we just thank you for guiding us here. This is a description of the beloved in ways I've never considered, things I'm still trying to understand with more depth. But I know that you are the teacher. And I know just by the faithfulness of opening up this chapter tonight and reading together that you will teach us, because you want us to understand and see you for who you are. Amen. So here she goes. This is a description of Yeshua. So let's behold the Lamb. Behold the man, as Pilate said. Behold the man, as John the Baptist said. Behold the Lamb. Because that's what we're looking at here. First off, verse 10, my beloved is white and ruddy, chief among 10,000. So I know myself, I said that to you tonight, and I woke up this morning, and the very first thing in my head was that. Just from studying it yesterday, meditating on it, and going, I want to learn this now. That's got to be the first thing, hasn't it, that we learn it. You know, just learn what the words say, learn the words of the song. And then I can just testify, this is easy to meditate on, to learn it, and to have it written on your mind, etc. But I woke up this morning, and that was the first thing in my mind was, my beloved is white and ruddy, chief among 10,000. I thought, I want to get like this. I want this inspired description of our beloved to be written on mine and your understanding. Is that okay? And as soon as I say this first word, you should realise, wow, this is what we're looking at here. Because it's not the word you're used to for white. Some of you will know the word for white. It's a famous word that we look at. It's not that word. The word that you're thinking of, and if you don't know it, but as soon as I say it, you'll know. Laban. Laban, remember that famous horrible character in Genesis? Laban. Well, that means white. Laban is white. And it's not that word. It's not that normal white. It's a much better word. It's the word zach. Zach, and it means dazzling. That should already be triggering some idea of what we're looking at. My beloved is dazzling. And even in the blue letter, if you look at it there, sunny bright. That definitely gives it away, doesn't it, what we're looking at here. My beloved is dazzling. He is bright like the sun. And that is obviously going to take us to the Gospels, isn't it? Matthew 17. And I love this little study. It's a little study, but I'm so familiar with skipping through this little study, which is so amazing. The depth of this, the awesomeness of this occasion is the Mount of Transfiguration. So let's read it, because my beloved, your beloved, is dazzling. He's bright like the sun, is what this word means, zach. So Matthew 17, after 6 days, Yeshua took Peter, James, and John, his brother, led them up on a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun. That's what this word means. Zach, bright like the sun, dazzling. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. I know Mark, I think it is, who says, whiter than any laundry on earth could make them. You know, this is the picture. And behold, well, will I read the rest? I won't read the rest so much, but I'm not going to do a full study on this. I normally do this on a Yom Kippur setting, because this is when this takes place, Yom Kippur. And that's another matter, but that is the scene that we're looking at. This Yeshua is transfigured before 3 of his disciples, and he shines like the sun, and his clothes become as white as the light, dazzling. So now, 2 Peter, just to see, just so you make sure you know what that is. What is that occasion? And Peter says this in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 16. Well, he says in verse 15, this is his reason for telling us this. Moreover, I will be careful to ensure that you always have a reminder of these things after my decease. He knows he's about to die. He tells us he's not long left, and he wants to leave us something with that's going to really help us. And he tells us this in verse 16, for we did not follow cunningly devised fables when we made known to you the power and coming. That's the word, famous word in Greek, parousia, the appearing. It's all to do with the second coming of the Lord. That's what the Mount of Transfiguration was. And that's what Peter is saying. We made known to you the power and coming, the appearing of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah, but we're eyewitnesses of his majesty. And that's what this is all about tonight, a description of the majestic King. We were witnesses of his majesty. And then he carries on for what you can read in Matthew 17. For he received from God the Father honor and glory when such a voice came to him from the excellent glory. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased, like the wilderness language. And we heard this voice, which came from heaven when we were with him on the holy mountain. So that's very clear, isn't it? Peter is going back to that Mount of Transfiguration, but Peter is telling us they saw him in his majesty, they saw him in his power, and they saw him in his coming. And so just to really finish that section off and clarify that, Revelation now, chapter 1. Revelation chapter 1 is all that again, and some, and a bit more. But Revelation chapter 1 is unmistakably saying the same things that we'll refer back to, so it's worth reading it. Revelation chapter 1, verse 12, this is when this voice, this loud voice, as of a shofar, speaks to John. And John turns to see the voice that spoke with me, and having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And in the midst of the 7 golden lampstands, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the feet, and girded about the chest with a golden band. His head and his hair were white like wool. Well, that sort of will contrast that in a minute. As white as snow, and his eyes like a flame of fire. His feet were like fine brass, which again, another comparison later on, as if refined in a furnace, and his voice is the sound of many waters. He had in his right hand 7 stars. Out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was just like it was on the Mount of Transfiguration, just like it was in Matthew 17, just like it was what Peter described when they saw him in his coming. His countenance was like the sun shining in its strength. What they saw on the Mount of Transfiguration was Yeshua in his glory, in his coming, and that's what she starts off with. My beloved is Zach, not white, whiter than white, dazzling white, bright like the sun, white. That's who he is. And ruddy. Now that's another lesson, another area we'll go into now. Well, we will in a minute. I've got one more thing to read out of that white. And I said to you tonight earlier, it's amazing, and I like these little, just like I just take them as little kisses off the Lord to say, yeah, okay, on track, the pace is okay, etc. Just because of little things like this, that means something to me at least. We were looking at the Nazarite really on the Sabbath just gone. We were in that wonderful portion of the adulterous wife who has to drink the cup of bitterness, and we touched briefly on the Nazarite because of the vow side of this, and not just the vow, but the pala vow, the very hard, the very difficult vow that Yeshua did by taking the cup for us, by paying the price for us. I'm not saying Yeshua is a Nazarite. I'm not saying that. I'm just very drawn to aspects of his death and the promise not to drink the fruit of the vine again, and things like this, quite Nazarite in their ways. But I'm not saying that. What I'm saying it for, it's just because we touched on the Nazarite, didn't we, on the last Sabbath. And so just in this study, this little word study of this white, which is not white, it's much whiter than white, etc. Right, is I come across the Lamentations, where this word, or the root of this word, but it's only used once, it's used, and the root of it's zachach. So zach is white, bright, sunny. This is zachach. And we'll come back to this verse again later, or if we don't, here it is now. Verse 7, here Nazarites, notice that Lamentations and lament over the fallen state of the once glorious city of God, the holy city of God, which has fallen into ruin. And it says in verse 7, here Nazarites were brighter than snow and whiter than milk. And there's that word being used there, brighter, zachach, brighter than snow and whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies, like sapphire in their appearance. Well, again, just in this short 6 verses or so, sapphires will come up in this description. The ruddiness that's mentioned there, it's like it's such a part, isn't it? Not saying Yeshua was a Nazarite. I've said what I've said, but the Nazarites are very similar, brighter than snow, whiter than milk, more ruddy in body than rubies, like sapphire in their appearance. You know, a Nazarite, one who takes a difficult vow. Hallelujah for the Lord, for the Lord, for what he's done for us. But that is what he is. He is white. And so that ruddy, now it's led into that Lamentations. There's connected it forward, is actually the whiteness, the ruddiness. There's a Nazarite connection going on. Well, let's move on from that, because this word ruddy is a great word. I think it's an obvious one. You might know it's got to do with red. Red, ruddy is red, isn't it? It's the Hebrew word Adam. So you've got Adam in this, haven't you? You've got Adam being mentioned in this. And we know, don't we? One of the, well, I don't know how to frame it, but it's like one of, I'd say really important anyway, title and understanding of Yeshua is that one, isn't it? That he's the last Adam. Everything that the first Adam got wrong, Yeshua, the last Adam, put right, didn't he? In the first Adam, we all die. And in the last Adam, we live. That's the gospel, isn't it? As Romans explains, the first, the second, or first and last Adam. And that's this language. He's dazzling. He is so majestic and holy and from heaven, but he is also so ruddy. He is also become a man. And that's how a lot of the commentators deal with this in the comparison between his deity and his humanity. Zach, white, pure, from heaven, and ruddy. A man. You know, that is what it's describing. Adam, red, coming from dam, blood. And that's who he is, isn't it? He's the man of blood. We are redeemed by his blood, aren't we? He's ruddy. And that is another place you see this word is in what we'll be in a few weeks, the awesome and mighty Numbers chapter 19, when we get the instructions for the red heifer. And what a picture that is of what Yeshua has done. And how, when we study Hebrews, how what Yeshua has done and how we can apply that into our lives, and the sprinkling of our consciences shadowed by, as Hebrews teaches, the ashes of a heifer. The ashes of the red heifer were used for purifying, weren't they, from dead bodies, etc., to make someone ritually clean. The ashes of a red heifer were used, and we'll get into that gospel message in a few weeks in Numbers 19. But just to say it now, the application is of the finished work of Yeshua and the ability for that to cleanse us and cleanse our conscience from dead works. And that's what Hebrews is teaching. We'll get into it more when we get there. But that is another understanding of he's white and ruddy. He is this bloody sacrifice. He is this Son of God, who is also the Son of David. He's the Son of God, but he's the Son of Man. He's white and ruddy. So much to draw out of this. And I know this is great meditation, understanding, great to meditate on. The Lord might add other things, and there's more to be said. But I'll just say this now that I've mentioned David. 1 Samuel, chapter 16. Because there's a great description of David, and it's a great description of Yeshua, because Yeshua is the Son of David, and you know he loves that title. You know he does from the Gospels. How many times you've seen them cry out, blind people, Son of David, have mercy. And his bowels, his compassion is stirred, isn't it? As they acknowledge he's the Son of David. He's the promised Messiah. He can heal us, have mercy on us, and he'd stretch out his hand, wouldn't he, and heal the blind, etc. And that Son of David is such a great way for us to talk about him as well, because he's ruddy. The beloved's ruddy.
Does David mean beloved?
Brilliant. David, well said. David means beloved. You know, we can't hear that getting said. I'm just reiterating what Terry said. David means beloved, as we've said in this. Dodi is beloved in this. It's got the same letters as David. Yeah, brilliant. Amen. Well, that's what he is. The beloved is the Son of David. You know, it's Solomon in this, who wrote this book, but Solomon's a son of David and a shadow picture on one hand of the Messiah. We also know Solomon had his issues, but he is a shadow picture of the Messiah, the Son of David. So it's no surprise that if the beloved is ruddy, it takes after his father. Because in 1 Samuel chapter 16, I think I'm just reading from verse 12, but it is this chapter when David's being selected and he's going to be anointed as king. So it's all majestic this time, and priestly if we get there. But anyway, verse 12, so he sent and brought him in David. Now he was ruddy, with bright eyes and good looking. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is the one. And Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him. You know, this is David being anointed as king, the shepherd boy being anointed as king. You know, his son is Solomon, but it's only a picture of the beloved. It's only Yeshua who is Zach. He is dazzling in his majesty, in his glory, in his coming. He is white and ruddy. Amen. You know, and there's other things we could say about this ruddiness. There's the same word, which again, it's not a common word, but it is in Isaiah 63, which is a famous one. It's all about the sort of judgment side of things as well. And you see it only in Revelation. His garments are red with what, like wine, and the blood that's being shed. And this is coming from Isaiah 63, verse 2. Why is your apparel red and your garments like one who treads in the winepress? And then obviously if you want to read more, Isaiah 63. So there's all of this, you know, he's a righteous king and judge. He is white and ruddy. A lot of comparisons, a lot more we could say. Yeah, I just want to mention this thing. We're just putting this in there at this stage, that one of the comparisons that one of the commentators make is that this whiteness, he sees in it the ever youthfulness, the virgin purity of Yeshua, and then the ruddiness, as we've already said, of his passion. But they mentioned the whiteness, comparing his ever youthfulness with the fact that, like what we saw in Revelation, when his hair is white, and it's a picture of he's the ancient of days, like Daniel describes him as. He is both, isn't he? He's ever young, everlasting, never aging, but he's also the ancient days. So that's just another thing that's being mentioned to do with this whiteness. But moving on, next part of this is he is chief among 10,000s, chief among 10,000s, or chief among Rababa, multitudes, which is, we love that language, don't we? We know how multitudes is so covenantal, isn't it? Exactly what God promised Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebecca. Multitudes are going to come forth from your loins. So it's great that he's this covenant language of multitudes, right through to Revelation 7, don't you see the multitudes coming out of the great tribulation? Well, he's the chief of the multitudes. That's what he's saying. He's the chief, but it's a great word, this. And it is one we've done recently in our studies when we were in the first chapter of Numbers. Remember that majestic chapter of Numbers with the trooping of the colour going on and the banners and all the rest of it? Well, that's the word, banner. Your chief among 10,000 is the same word, or coming from the same word we looked at when it was every tribe must camp by its own banner, by its own dagal. And we'll see that more in the next weeks when we carry on in the song, when we get into chapter 6. And there's two awesome references, literally, because this army during this time, I believe, will be seen by the Lord as awesome, as an army with banners, banners, but he is the banner. He is the banner. So I think I had this the other week, but it's that good. I think I'll just read it again. Psalm 20. Again, it's not one of them words you've got all over the place. There's only a few words. I love word studies because you can really link some great scriptures together through just the word connections. So I know I read this the other week, but it was so good. I'll read it again. Psalm 20. May the Lord Yahovah answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of God of Jacob defend you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and strengthen you out of Zion. I hope you become a lover of Zion. It's such it's our home. It's our home, Zion. May he remember all your offerings, accept all your burnt sacrifices, all of your drawing near to him. May he grant you according to your heart's desire and fulfill all your purpose. Amen. We will rejoice in your salvation, your Yeshua. And in the name of our God, we will set up our banners. May Yahovah fulfill all your petitions. Now I know Yahovah saves his anointed. He will answer him from his holy heaven with the saving strength of his right hand. Some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we will remember the name of Yahovah, our Elohim. They have bowed down and fallen, but we have risen and stand upright. Save Yahovah. May the King answer us when we call. I just couldn't help it. What a psalm. What a really encouraging, awesome psalm that is, but only because it's got that in there. We will set up, in the name of our God, we will set up our banners, and especially in these last days, get your banners and get out there and proclaim the King. Awesome as an army with banners. Oh, Lord, I pray for that, Lord. Your people will get out to proclaim, even wherever they are, in all of the places where your people are, Lord, that the banners will start to be unfurled. The banners will start to be set up, because we want to do this now, Lord, not later, now, and be awesome as an army with banners. Because as we read at the very start of this song, chapter 2, his banner over us is love, isn't it? That's the banner over this army, the love of God. The greatest command is to love God, and to love one another is like it. And it all comes from the fact that he first loved us. His banner over us is love. Amen. So that's what it's saying anyway. He's the banner. He's the banner. Or you could say he is the standard bearer. He is the one who raises the standard. Among multitudes, he is got the privilege. He is the banner. And that's exactly what Isaiah says, isn't it? Isaiah 11 says this wonderful prophecy in Isaiah 11. Mighty prophecy. It's awesome, isn't it, that one? You know, the rod coming from Jesse. But it says in verse 11, in verse 10, Isaiah 11, verse 10, and it shall be in that day, there shall be a root of Jesse who shall stand as a banner to the people. For the Gentiles shall seek him. You know, if you want to witness to any Jews, just ask them that. Say, hey, what other Jewish fella do Gentiles worship? Is there any other Jewish character that Gentiles seek after? And when they realise, no, go, well, yeah, it's Yeshua. He's the one the Gentiles seek. And his resting place shall be glorious. This is the banner language. And that's what she's describing. My beloved is dazzling and ruddy. He is the banner that's going to be lifted up for all the nations to come to. The Gentiles, the nations will seek him. Praise the Lord. That's who he is. That's how we need to describe him. You know, the daughters of Jerusalem out there, the ones that don't understand the gospel yet, don't understand who Yeshua is. You know, the physical daughters of Jerusalem, Israelites, but also those who love the Lord and love religion and just need to understand more the relationship. Is that okay to say it like that? Because we've got to be able to explain who he is. And this is the language he's inspired. If anyone asks you who I am, if anyone asks you, why is Jesus more important than Muhammad? Or why is he more important than any other religion? What's your beloved more than all the other beloveds? Tell him. Is your beloved dazzling? Is your beloved ruddy? Is your beloved the chief? Is he the banner to the nations? We've got to explain who he is in this way. I think we have, this is what I'm getting out of it. I am evangelistic more than anything in ways, and I want to be. I want to be good at evangelism. And this I'm taking hold of, going, help me to explain who you are, Lord. You know, but using Scouse words, you know, putting this into a language that people in this city can understand. But it's got to come from this understanding. And this is wonderful meditation stuff. So I think I'll move on. Unless anyone wants to say anything, I mean, I'll just start moving on from that bit. There's loads more in my notes I'm looking at, but I'm thinking to move on. Yeah, because I'm not going to obviously get much further, you know. But we get on to this next part. Is another wonderful part of this? And I really, that's why I said it sometimes it might be a bit, not intense, but, you know, we're going to go there, go a bit deeper. Well, what's this mean? You know, so the first part of that was wonderful. But now the next part about his head. And so we are, like we said, with the bride, with a wonderful description that the beloved gave of the bride in chapter 4, and will be reiterated to this once foolish, now wise virgin, I believe. Similar descriptions. Well, this is all about the beloved. This is a great description of him, and it's from head to feet. That's how this works, isn't it? You see how this ends up. It ends up with all right down with his legs and his feet. And I'll just mention that now, verse 15, it says his legs and pillars of marble set on bases of fine gold. So legs on bases, his feet, isn't it? And the feet, so much different than Nebuchadnezzar's vision, wasn't it? That started with a head of gold. And the explanation that was, you're the above everyone. Your kingdom's the greatest. You know, the Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold. And then it went down, didn't it? In layers of decreasing value of precious metals, but it started off with the head of gold, and Daniel explained that that was the surpassing greatness of that kingdom, etc. So this is the kingdom of God we're talking about. But his head is bases of his feet are fine gold, not like Nebuchadnezzar's or Daniel's statue, which ended up with the iron mingled with clay, wasn't it? That's how that statue ended up, the humanity statue of kingdoms. But this is the eternal from everlasting to everlasting. This is the beginning and the end kingdom of God, which starts with the head, which is fine gold, and ends with the feet, which is fine gold. And it's a word you'll notice that you wouldn't know you knew it, but as soon as I say it, you'll go, oh no, you know it. But not in a biblical context, because the word for the fine gold, it's not like gold is another famous word, is zahav. You might know zahav is the normal gold we use, the normal gold we come across is zahav. But this is not that. This is a different gold. This is paz, and it comes from a word that you'll know, pizzazz. You've heard of that, haven't you? Give it some pizzazz, brighten it up a bit, make it a bit more pleasing on the eye, give it some pizzazz. And that's the Hebrew word, is pizzazz, and means best, finest, pizzazz. And that's what this is. Pizzazz. His head is like the finest gold. And we'll carry on. His locks are wavy, or bushy, you might say in King James. But again, wavy is coming from a word which is connected with the palms, the leaves of a palm tree, the palm branches blowing in the wind. It's that language in the Hebrew to picture this wavy, flowing locks that are as black as a raven. And that's why I mentioned that before, of the comparisons between the Ancient of Days and the youth of black hair compared to what we saw Yeshua with hair like wool, white as snow, white as wool. He's both, isn't he? He's ancient and he's ever young, But I go back to this head is like finest gold, because there's just a little study I want to do on that. Finest gold. It's not the normal gold, it's the finest of gold. It's just to see it in Revelation to make sense of it. Revelation 14 is where you see Yeshua. He's the king, isn't he? Yeshua is the king of kings. He's the king. There's no one like him. There's no one come near him. He is the King of Kings. He just stands alone, doesn't he? In his majesty. His head's like the finest gold. So Revelation 14, verse 14, then I looked and behold a white cloud. And all of this imagery, I'm not sure if you've read somewhere tonight, earlier on in Revelation, or even in the Mount of Transfiguration, that cloud's there, isn't it? That cloud's always present. And Daniel imagery, but anyway, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, you see. And that's what she's saying. This is that, my beloved, is that. It's Yeshua. He's the King of Kings, and he has got a golden crown on his head. So it's definitely related to kingship, isn't it? You can see that, can't you? The kingship. But what you might not always think about when you see a golden crown is the priestly side of this. And I want to bring out the priestly side of this. And anytime I mention a king and a priest, we're going to end up mentioning Melchizedek. Because if you want to be a daughter of Zion, then you're going to be very Melchizedek oriented, because this is the new covenant. We're not of the Aaronic. We're not Levitical. We're not the daughters of Jerusalem. We're not of that earthly Jerusalem. We are of the heavenly Jerusalem. And that's the Melchizedek understanding. So hopefully this helps some way to have something to study in light of this, because golden crowns are not just for kings. In Exodus 28, we can see that they're also for priests. And I didn't get to mention it properly on the last Sabbath meeting, but in that Nazarite study, there was mention of the defiling of his head and his consecrated head. And there was a word there that was also used in Exodus 28, and it was translated as crown. And it's in Exodus 28, verse 26, that it says, you shall make, Exodus 28, verse 26, isn't it? Or was it 36? Sorry, it's not changed. Exodus 28, verse 36. You shall also make a plate of pure gold and engrave on it, like the engraving of a signet, holiness to Jehovah. And you shall put on it a blue cord, that it may be on the turban, and it shall be on the front of the turban. So it shall be on Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things which the children of Israel hallow in all their holy gifts. And it shall always be on his forehead, that they may be accepted before Jehovah. So you can see there, kind of, a golden crown is also the high priest's headdress. And then to finish off that section, or that little crown study, is a wonderful passage from Zechariah, which brings this together in a wonderful way. Zechariah chapter 6, verse 11. Or verse 11. Verse 11, yeah. Verse 11. Zechariah chapter 6, verse 11. Take the silver and gold, make an elaborate crown, and set it on the head of Joshua, Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Then speak to him, saying, thus says Jehovah Sabaoth, behold the man whose name is the branch. From his place he shall branch out, and he shall build the temple of Jehovah. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll build it. Speaking of his death, wasn't it? And resurrection. Anyway, he shall build the temple of Jehovah. He shall bear the glory. He shall sit and rule on his throne. So that's king, isn't it? King language, that, isn't it? He shall sit and rule on his throne. He shall be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both. Both what? Both offices of king and priest. That's what it's saying. He's going to sit as a king, but also have the office of priest on his throne. So that's just another understanding from that little section of his head is like the finest gold. The study of that has to take it into kings sitting on thrones. But you can see in the revelation of Yeshua, who is the man, who is the branch. He has the office of king and the office of peace. And unlike in the old covenants, there's absolutely no tension at all and no contradiction. You couldn't have this in the old covenants. The kings were from the line of Aaron, and the priests were from the line of Judah. But Yeshua, who is the King of Kings, is a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. And that's how important Melchizedek is. This understanding to the new covenant, this understanding to who our beloved is. We can see him now with his head, the finest gold, Pazas, a king and a priest, seated on his throne, and the council of Shalom between the both of these officers. And I won't go on any more about that, but that is wonderful to meditate on, wonderful to understand these things. And just this finest gold, I've got 3 references, so I'm going to read them just because they're encouraging references. And then I think we've been going not far off, for 45 minutes, so I'm not going to drag it out for much more than 10-15 minutes now.
It's funny when you read that, it said, behold the man somewhere there, and didn't Pilate say?
That's how I prayed at the start, wasn't it?
Behold the man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Confirming again, the whole of what you just read is talking about him.
all about him. This is the description of the beloved.
Yeah.
And his head is like the finest gold, the finest gold. And again, it's that word that you don't see everywhere. It's not an all over the place word. As I said, normal word for gold, zahav, zahav. But this is finest gold. And the first time, or the first reference I've got is from Psalm 19, very famous. Psalm 19, talking about verse 7, the Torah of the Lord, the testimony of the Lord. Verse 8, the statutes of the Lord, the commandments of the Lord, the fear of the Lord, the judgments of the Lord. All of that is more to be desired than gold, yea, than much paz, than fine gold. You know, you can't separate the beloved's head from all of who he is.
Yeah.
And who he is what he says, what he does, and what he has given us, his counsel, his Torah, his judgments, his statutes. All of that, according to the Psalm, is more to be desired than fine gold. And then another reference for the fine gold is still in Psalm 119, just to encourage us in our walk of studying these things and why we study these things. Psalm 119, verse 127. Therefore, I love your commandments more than gold, yes, than fine gold. Proverbs, you know, obviously the same writer as the Song of Solomon is Solomon. He wrote Proverbs. So we've got to make them connections in Proverbs 8, verse 19, just a quick one. But all Proverbs 8 is about his sister. Let's get to know her this way and refer to her this way, because the proverb says, say to wisdom, you're my sister. So let's be familiar in that way. And Proverbs 8, verse 19, speaking of our wonderful sister, she says, my fruit, my wisdom, my sister, wisdom, my fruit is better than gold, yes, than fine gold. You know, wisdom, the fruit of wisdom, the commandments of God, his judgments, his statutes, they're better than fine gold. Seen a cracking statement, I don't know what it was on the news yesterday or something. Bob Marley made this brilliant statement saying, some people are that poor, all they've got is money. I thought, wow, what a statement that is. Some people are that poor, all they've got is money. Have you got the love of God? Have you got the love of his commandments? You know, have you got the love of his wisdom? It's better than fine gold. And fine gold's better than gold, as we've already seen. And then finally, another Lamentations verse. We've looked at Lamentations already, haven't we, in light of the Nazarites, who were white and bright, you know. So we'll be back in that again. But Lamentations, just to finish off this little bit, is chapter 4, verse 2. The precious sons of Zion. See, we've got to love Zion. The precious sons of Zion are valuable as fine gold. How they are regarded as clay pots, the work of the hands of the potter. You know, but this is all in the midst of, you know, just before that, how the goals become dim. It's such a fall from the lofty heights of covenant keeping with God, and how Jerusalem has fallen, you know, into this state. But the precious sons of Zion are valuable as fine gold. So that's beautiful language, isn't it? It just helps us in our understanding. And I'm going to sort of get ready to finish off now. I think, looking at this. But nearly an hour, but we can do the next section if you want, the next verse, which is about his eyes are like doves.
Yeah.
So, I did mention the locks before, and I just said it quickly, how it's being compared to the black locks. There's a guy from Cornerstone, lovely, remember Roy and Vera, and I remember him talking about the Song of Songs. That's how long ago this goes back, you know, as I say, 10 years or so. And he talked about the black locks in terms of how Yeshua had taken upon himself all the sins. And I thought that made sense to me at the time. And I'm not saying, well, there's many ways to look, isn't there? Many ways. These commentaries, they've got various ways of looking at things, and I wouldn't rule that out. But I look in this comparison, the way we've already seen Yeshua in Revelation with his white hair, and now it's his black hair. And again, I've said it once or twice already tonight, but the commentators I'm reading connect this with his youthfulness, as opposed to him being also the Ancient of Days with his white hair. So that's a contrast that I can see, I can understand. But just mentioning the fact that his locks are as black as a raven. And then the next issue is his eyes are like doves. And I couldn't help but just be mindful of where you see these two winged creatures together. The way they're together in this. His hair is like a raven, his eyes are like doves. And I thought, I don't know what else to bring out of it other than these two winged creatures both appear, don't they? Right at the very beginning of the Bible, in Genesis, on Noah's Ark, and he sends out a raven and doesn't come back. And he sends out a dove, and these two birds at Noah's Ark. So that's what it does to me. It just puts me in line of like, oh yeah, Noah's Ark, the raven was there. The raven, it's not a clean bird that is given for food, but it's a wonderful creation, isn't it? It was on the ark, and it's in the ark narrative, and I'm sure there's more to say about that. But another place where the raven pops up is wonderful, isn't it? Where they used of the Lord to feed Elijah, the prophet, and the ravens are sound, aren't they? We can look at them as bad, demonic, because of the way they're being portrayed and stuff, but really in the Bible, the sound, aren't they? I think, they fed Elijah, they were used to feed Elijah. So his locks anyway, these palm leaf locks, flowing, wavy locks, are like as black as a raven. And
he was in the prime. I mean, if you think about it,
yeah.
He was in the prime of his life.
Yeah.
That's what it speaks to me, that Yeshua was in the prime of his life.
That's right.
Yeah. All, it just makes me remember that.
Yeah, amen. I'm just looking at my little thing there, but the locks, the last time they were mentioned is when he was outside knocking. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
He was outside knocking, and he's saying, "My locks damp with the dew of the night," And one of the commentators said, what a pity that she didn't open in time. Just a little side comment. But anyway, finally, then let's finish off with this. I think we've been going for an hour, so let's just finish off and leave it there. We'll come back to it next week. But the next issue is his eyes. His eyes are like doves by the rivers of waters, washed with milk and fitly set. So that's verse 12. We're going to finish with that verse tonight. Thanks, Lord, for what we've read, what we're going to read, what we are reading. It's inspired. It's wonderful. We've had some good scriptures to at least think about tonight. And I just pray, Lord, that this won't just be something to do on a Tuesday night, but that this really will have an effect on our lives, Lord. That help us to understand you.
Amen.
Jesus of Nazareth has helped me over the years to get a picture, and reading the Gospels has really helped me to get a picture. But I know this is going to help even deeper to see more of who you are. So, amen. His eyes are like doves by the rivers of water. So that's familiar language to us, isn't it? We've seen how the beloved said to his spouse, your eyes, you've got dove's eyes. Well, this is saying that his eyes are like doves. So I always bring it out. I'm tired of saying it. And then it does go back to what I've just said about the ark as well, in some ways, is that doves in Hebrew is Jonah, the man that was in the belly of a whale or a big fish, the one that was spat out 3 days and 3 nights later he was spat out, vomited out of this mouth of this big fish, Jonah. And so I just always connect these eyes with that journey of the death, burial, and resurrection. The burial we won't get to tonight, and I was going to, we got there, go back over what you brought out last week, which we will do next time when we get back on the May. But I'll just say it now, and then we'll definitely pick up on it next time. But Terry brought out something really good, and we spent like 2 hours last week after the study, and you were doing most of the talking to us, wasn't he? And talking about when I go, everyone knows that May is connected with death. In undisputed, amen. And then it is, but you went another layer deeper, didn't you? Literally another level deeper, a subterranean level, because May is more specifically connected with burial, hence more subterranean level, deeper underground level. May connected with burial. So we will get into that more next time. So then we want to really bring out there, think about it, because we'll be touching about the May next time as we go further in this description. But I just want to say about these doves, I like to always bring out this Jonah side of this. We've mentioned how doves' eyes are straightforward looking, monogamous. This is the beloved. Thankfully, the wise bride takes after him in these character traits. But his eyes are like Jonah's. You know, he's died, he's buried, he's risen. You know, imagine Jonah's eyes coming out of that fish. And then again, reading these commentaries, some beautiful lyrical ways and descriptions of how these people write. But you could almost see these gorgeous white doves dipping into the River Jordan, going into bathe, being, you know, being dove-like and drinking from this water, you know. They just paint a gorgeous picture. You can almost see the vividness of these gorgeous birds that are washed in milk, you know, the whiteness of them, the purity of them. Well, his eyes are like this. Eyes are like these wonderful birds that wash and they're clean, and the great sacrificial birds, aren't they, in the Bible? We've seen them in the cleansing of lepers and so on. And poor people can use these when they want to be cleansed. The dove's just a wonderful creature, isn't it? That relates, connects with the Spirit of God. Because that's how I sort of go back into the Noah narrative now. Because whenever you see doves by rivers of water, you've got to be thinking of Yeshua's baptism, haven't you? You've got to be thinking when Yeshua went into the wonderful Jordan to be baptized, and when he came up out of the river, the Holy Spirit descended upon him like a dove, didn't he? Or didn't he? The Spirit of God descended like a dove. And whenever we do that, study and touch on Yeshua's baptism, we always connect it with Noah's Ark and doves being present, and the whole picture of Noah's Ark is a message of baptism, as Peter explains. Peter explains, doesn't he, that Noah's Ark message is a message of baptism and new birth. And so that's what I see in this, his eyes, of this wonderful picture of life and resurrection and the Spirit of God and all of that, you know, washed with milk. Whenever we talk about milk, we talk about what Peter talks about when he says, desire sincerely the earnest milk of the word, isn't it? The spiritual, earnestly desire the spiritual word, is it? The milk of the word. And then obviously the other connection with milk is the land itself, is the land, isn't it? That flows with milk and honey. And the land is the promised land, and the promise, and he mentioned the promise is pointing to the new covenant promise of the Spirit. So it's all in there, isn't it? Doves, Spirit, milk, his eyes are like this.
Oh yeah, just a quick one. I've got a picture there of a dove at Bethabara, because remember
the crossing.
well, yeah, when Dean, Stuart and Jim got baptised there,
Oh yeah.
untold white doves
Oh wow.
everywhere. You know
Beautiful.
what I mean? It was just absolutely
Praise the Lord.
amazing. And like you were saying then, you alluded to milk. It's not sort of like a coincidence that it's the place where they crossed over to go into the land of milk and honey.
Brilliant.
You know what I mean? Because they crossed over the Aberard, didn't they, when all the doves are, and the
Brilliant.
dove turned up over Yeshua and that.
Praise
You
the
know what I
Lord.
mean? So
That
there's
is
milk
wonderful.
in there as well.
That is brilliant. That is
Just
wonderful.
remember how many white doves there were when they got baptised.
Praise the Lord, Sarah. That is a great witness from, from the land of Israel. Terry is an Israelite in his travels, and that is a great testimony, isn't it, to what the writer is seeing here with this beautiful river of life and this dove picture. And I love that connection that you've made. Terry's saying where Yeshua was baptized was at a place called Beit Abara, which means the house of crossing, all connected with the children of Israel crossing into the land of milk and honey, the promised land. Brilliant. Amen. And then so the final phrase in this is that his eyes are like doves by rivers of waters, washed with milk and fitly set. Or in Hebrew, better to look at it like this, sitting in fullness. And as the commentators bring out, the imagery is of a jewel set in its holder, its golden clasp, and a jewel firmly set in it. And any mention of jewels and being fitted and set in place is going to take us back to the priestly narrative, isn't it, of the breastplate and the jewels in the breastplate that are set in fullness. So again, it's just always flitting here between the majestic royal throne language and the priestly language of the jewels. That is the context for what being fitly set is. The jewels in the high priest's breastplate. So I'm gonna finish there. Might be a short one tonight, but there's so much more, and I don't want to. And it's quite intense anyway to think over. And I just love the input and the interaction, because it is an ongoing thing. This I'm fully expecting to get more out of the things I've already looked at. More with what's going to come. But let's just finish with prayer, because Lord, it's all about you. I mean, this is the Shunammite who got out of bed in a time of great tribulation, has come to her senses, has got oil now in her lap, and is now wise, and is now ready for what remains. And she's been inquired of. What's so special about you? And we'll be inquired of. And on the streets here are people with different backgrounds and faiths challenged with their understanding and their ways. Talking about Noah, I met a Muslim today called Noah, and had the privilege of sharing the gospel with him. He killed himself a week ago. So, what's our beloved more than his beloved? And I want the ability to be able to convince these people, Lord, not to win an argument, but to win a soul. I pray for Noah today, Lord, and Joe. They're both on the way to NA meetings. And I pray for the salvation of their souls, Lord. I pray that they will come to know our beloved, because our beloved, there is no one like him. There's no other beloved like our beloved. He's dazzling and ruddy. He is the chief, the standard bearer among multitudes. His head is like finest gold, and his locks are wavy and black as a raven, and his eyes are like doves. So visit these people, Lord. Visit them and help us to be able to explain you to people in this way, but in a way they understand. But we don't understand it. How are we going to explain, Lord? We want to know you now, like never before. And I ask you for this, Lord. I ask you for this for each one of us tonight, and whoever will watch this in the time to come. But Lord, help us to know our beloved and be able to explain him and reveal him and talk about him in this way, in the sense that you're the king, and that you're the priest, and that you are the saviour of the world. So we give you praise tonight. Heavenly Father, for your son, Yeshua, for sending him, for coming, Lord, for doing what you had to do, for doing it well, and for doing it fully, and for going back now, and for sending the Holy Spirit. Until you return, Lord, we just want you to come. And for the time we've got, help us to be wise. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thanks for joining us, etc. Amen.